before Mr. Leon, quickly, okay, we hung up last weekend, and what tell us about the weekend, the Tea Party weekend.
Oh man, it was electrifying. This is the fourth one that I've gone to, and I've seen, the way people react to certain things, and energy goes up, energy goes down, it varies, but this had everyone fired up. Everyone was really positive about this last convention, and I think it's because we had positive messages going out, and people are willing to take the fight to the street. And I do believe we have our guest here now. Let me just bring his microphone on. And Dr. Winn, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you all doing?
All right. A little discombobulated because this week kind of like panned out where I was running like a chicken with my head cut off. But and it's not going to be done until after Tuesday, as you know. You're going to be with us on Tuesday. Yeah, it's going to be fun because I enjoyed seeing you and your wife again up there, and you've got a great staff working with you. And
Thank you. Same here.
Doing everything possible to get your name out there in front. I was up in Walterboro yesterday because that's where our eye doctor is with the insurance covers. I have to go all the way up to Walterboro, like there's anything in Walterboro. Anyway, I was talking to the girls in the shop there, and I said, well, do you know who your congressman is? No one knew. No one knew who the congressman is.
What were the age group?
Well, one of them was, I would say, in her late 30s, 40s. The other young lady was a little bit younger. The girl I was speaking to, her father is the acting police chief up there. So she's no spring chicken.
Really?
But she didn't. I mean, here you are. You're in law enforcement. You should know who your legislatures are because they're the ones enacting the laws that you've got to enforce. And if her husband is going out in the street and laying his butt on the line, and I'm a retired cop too, I want to know who's doing these laws and whether or not the law they're passing is something that I feel would not violate my vow to the Constitution and my vow to the city, state, or whatever you're serving.
Hence, that's one of the things that I've shared with people as I meet near and far, is that most of that generation, the reason I ask the age, that generation is basically, I use the terminology disenfranchised, which in most simplistic terms is they don't know who these people are. They don't know who the congressmen are, and because they are not out there doing anything that make any impact on their lives.
Well, it's funny you say they're no impact on their lives. But when you have gun control, when you have control of speech, control of religion, and now control of your very health, don't you think people would wake up and start to smell the coffee? I think that's my favorite phrase today.
They should, not they should, we should. But once again, people look at stuff in the individual life. Now, we run into for politics and what you're doing on the radio show, trying to get information out there broad. The average individual is concerned about what their personal life is, and you can't hold that against them. And when I say that they don't impact their lives, is because they don't know who they are. They're not out there. They're not implementing programs to say, well, my congressman did this, or everything that we hear is not adding or helping, it's taken away or destroying.
Oh, well, it's funny because, someone was complaining and then saying, oh, well, I don't like what's going on here. I don't like what's going on there. And my response to them was, and I think I told you this, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm coming to the convention with you. Yes, but what are you doing? Well, I'm sitting here, I'm listening. No, you don't understand. What are you doing? What are you willing to do to change the tide? And there's no answer. And I think people are just too timid to take that step forward.
We have to get the terminology that people are using now. You got to think outside the box. I don't say think outside the box. You got to get outside the box. You got to get out in the community. You got to get in the political arena, and you got to make your presence known. You can't just be there. A lot of people were at the convention this weekend, but how many people made their presence known? That's what makes a difference. When you're doing something, your presence ought to be felt. Your presence ought to be known. Your voice ought to be heard, and that's what people have to learn to do.
Exactly. I really enjoyed it because you saw me. I was all over the place. I was walking around. I was talking to people, getting their opinions, expressing mine. And, someone turned around and says, well, are you going to make any difference? And I said, well, if I go out there and I convince one person, on an issue I'm very passionate about, if I can convince one person and they see and feel that passion, they're going to go and tell a friend or family member, and they're going to spread that passion. And so that my speaking to one person now spreads into hundreds and thousands. And
what? Go ahead.
I was going to say, it takes just one person to start that snowball going down the side of the mountain to build that avalanche.
It's tantamount to the concept, and me being straight from the country and just have a whole country appeal, is that it's like walking up to a big oak tree, and you look at the tree and you say, I can't move that tree. There's nothing I can do. Just nothing I can do. But the tree needs to come down. How does that tree come down? One chop at a time. And if you keep on chopping, you keep on plugging, you keep on hitting, eventually it may take a while. You're going to feel the pain, you're going to feel the agony, but you got to keep on chopping if you want it down. And that's what we have to do. We have to keep on chopping, talk to people, network, get others to network, and call people. Just do something. Just don't sit up and just wait on things to change. You have to help you eradicate that change.
Exactly. So that's why whenever I go outside of the district that I'm in, because I've got Mark Sanford, but, there's a border just a matter of, half a mile away where your district then falls into place. But whenever I travel outside my district, I ask, are you aware who's running, against James Clyburn? And when they say, oh, I don't even know who my congressman is, that's when you see me roll into action. So I'm hoping, I was over at Harold's Country Club. On the way back, of course, the car always turns into Harold's. I'm coming down 17.
It finds its own way there, right?
It does. It's like autopilot. And I start talking to the people there, and again, they didn't know who their congressman was. And I said, well, it's James Clyburn. You're in Clyburn's district. Are you aware there's a conservative Republican running against him? And to a person, they said no. And I said,
that is our overall challenge, is that we have to get our face out there, get our name out there, and let people know there is a candidate. There's someone that actually can defeat Clyburn. And that's what we're working hard to do through the media. We're going to have to use a lot of grassroots efforts. We're going to have to use posters. We're going to have to even eventually do commercials because people need to know. And if they don't know, how can we expect them to do anything? They just follow the same rut they've always followed.
Well, you know what? We just got ourselves up on Kinetic Hi-Fi out of Charleston, which is also another area that you're going to be covering. So I'm going to have to talk to you about taking out an ad on this show then. And it's very inexpensive, and your campaign manager, James, is going to love me. So I'll talk to him later on after the show. Now, we got a question popping up in the chat room already. But before we go into those questions, I want you to introduce yourself to the listeners. You're running for South Carolina District 6 to the U.S. Congress.
Yes, my name is Leon Winn. From southeast Georgia originally. I've been in South Carolina going on almost 40 years. I've been self-employed the majority of my life. I've owned my own businesses. I've been in law enforcement. I've been in the United States Air Force. I've been always active. I pastored a church. I've been pastoring over 33 years. I've been at the church I'm now at 17 years in Manning, South Carolina. I've always been active. I've never been docile. I've always done things constructive and positive. That's who I am. I'm a father of 3 daughters, 3 grandchildren, and I'm married. I keep forgetting that. That's why I have to write it down.
But, you're also unusual because you're a conservative.
Yes, and I'm a Republican. I'm a black Republican, and that's not the norm in this area. But we're going to change that.
I'll guess. Yes. It always frustrated me because when we were going to the 2008 and 2010 and 12 elections, I was talking to someone who happened to have been a good Baptist, and I said, I don't understand why more people that are people of the faith and people of the church, why aren't they more as conservatives? Because you don't want government inside your church. You don't want government inside your life. You want to be able to be responsible for your own actions. You want to be able to take care of yourself and your community through your church and through your own doings. So why do you go to someone that makes you dependent upon government, that has government intruding in your life? Why aren't you a Republican or a conservative? And no one ever had an answer.
And I can give that answer because I'm a product of that. We're a product of our environment. We were brought up in a culture where blacks are Democrats and whites are Republican. That's how I came up. That's all I knew. Regardless to what the Republican Party was doing or regardless of what the Democratic Party was doing, we stuck with the black side of politics because that's what we were taught. I didn't know any different, and I think that I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I didn't know any different until the last 5 years ago because no one talked about it. We were caught up in the dogma of our foundation, where we came from, the areas in which we live in, and this is what have transpired. And what we're doing now is getting the message out that there is nothing further from the truth. It is the Republican Party that liberated the black community. It is the Republican Party that was fighting for freedom. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Martin Luther King, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Mary Cloud Bethune, John C. Woodson, who wrote the National Black, John C. Woodson, who wrote the National, I think that name is right, who wrote the National Black Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. All these people, all the pioneers that brought about change for the black community were Republican, and it was based on their Christian belief. Every Christian that believes in God is really a Republican.
Well, I don't remember the name of the state senator here in South Carolina, but he had a doctrine because he was Ku Klux Klan, and he had a doctrine, a Democratic senator, but he felt that he had to change the black vote from the Republican Party into the Democratic Party, and he did that by intimidation. He had a group called the Red Shirts, and they would go out and lynch and burn and actually cowed a whole segment of our society and force them into the Democratic Party. And I think once that happened, it was like, well, we don't want any trouble. We don't want to see ourselves lynched. So the easiest way out is to say I'm a Democrat and vote Democrat.
Exactly. And if you do some background research to build on what you're saying, and we're synonymous in our thought, is that back in the late 50s, early 60s, you could not find a Republican in South Carolina. I heard a gentleman said you couldn't find them with a hound dog because they were ran out of the area, and everybody that taught that principle were lynched or killed, literally.
Exactly, and the same thing held true for Georgia, because I have a friend of mine, Judge Murray Silver, and he was there with the Reverend Abernathy and Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. and Jr. throughout the whole civil rights. He was a civil rights attorney out of Atlanta. You probably from that area know him. He now lives out in Hilton Head here. Yeah, he wrote the book Daddy King and Me. And when I was talking to him, and I said, why were you a Democrat when you stood for all these principles? He goes, honey, you couldn't do anything in the state of Georgia. You couldn't go into business. No one would listen to you or pay attention to you unless you were a registered Democrat. There was just no other way to do business.
And they had to deal with what they had to deal with. They had no choice in the matter. So you either do it to survive or you just get pushed aside. So we can't necessarily hold it against them, because I was in a meeting last night and I was talking about when integration a little bit, and I shared with the people that was over 55 and over 60, I said it was just a different time in a different era, but time of change.
Time of change. Now, we got to do, I don't want to put the teeth in backwards. You can see I've been rushed around all week. We have a question here in the chat room, so I don't want to leave this poor person hanging too long. Sammy, she's asking what your view is on Affordable Care Act and birth control. We're saying that you will get elected. So now here you are, Congressman Winn. What are you going to do about them?
Once again, and I share this, you can't legislate morality when it comes to birth control. Affordable Care Act, and I think we're on the same point. We're talking about Obamacare. Am I correct?
Correct.
All right. You can't make people buy insurance, and there's going to be a penalty, from what I understand, that if you don't purchase it by X amount of days, you're going to be penalized. I will fight the Affordable Care Act, because what has happened, we cannot allow the government to take over the insurances of the nation. That's taking away free enterprise. When the government take over, then it will pull all other companies out of business, first and foremost. Then there's no competition. There's no rate change. There's nothing that would cause people to get better health care. It is not going to produce better health care, because you just got the government. Government should not be in the insurance business at all. Government government was not designed for that.
No, not at all. And now a major group, Aetna, is saying they're going to pull out of Obamacare. You know, how many millions of people across the United States have insurance through Aetna? And they will lose it.
A couple of months ago, when the government shutdown was, I was talking to this young lady, and we were just talking in general, and she worked for Shaw Air Force Base, and she said, I'm out of work. We're not being paid. We've been out of work a week, or 2 weeks at a time, and she said, if we're not being paid, who is paying our insurance? And she woke me up in the concept of that they can lose their health benefit because of what the government is doing. The government is intruding too much in personal liberties, and it has to be stopped. We have to stop it.
Okay. Now, we also had another question from someone else in the chat room. He goes by GOP Gopher Fan. He's asking if you have any big money backing you. And as far as I know, you've got no big backers.
None at all. And one of the things that I believe in is this. The Bible teaches the love of money is the root of all evil. You don't have to steal it, rob it, or cheat people out of the love it. I'm not going to be bought, and I guarantee you that unequivocally. The people that will elect me will the people that I will stand for, not for any personal gain, but standing for the people. Far too many times, and I've helped people that ran for political office. And you know it, I'm talking, and people say, well, you're saying the same thing that the other person say. I'm going to make a difference. The same people we put in office, somehow, some way between here and the office, they forget who put them there. They don't realize it's the people that put you there. It's the people. One of the things that I love about Lord Jesus, one of our deceased senators, Strom Thurmond. Strom Thurmond was great because he loved his people. What made Strom Thurmond the mighty force he was? He loved the people of South Carolina. He did everything to protect the people of South Carolina. And I admire that. I always did. And I would work very hard to do basically the same thing, or to do the same thing. Take care of your people.
Well, one of my pet peeves is, which I've had with some of our representatives here and senators, is that whenever they say they're bringing jobs to South Carolina, they never look to the poorest area that has the most manpower and probably the most intellectual resources, because so many people are looking for work. We've got northern Beaufort County here, north of the Broad and south of Charleston, where we used to have 7 large manufacturers, one including a jean company. We're down to one. And this is just in the 12 years that I've lived, no, the first 12 years I've lived here. And nothing new has come to the area. You get it south of the Broad going into Bluffton, Hilton Head, Jasper County now. You have it going up into Columbia and the areas outlying Columbia. You've got it going up into Charleston, especially North Charleston. But nothing is coming here to the very heart of the 6th District.
One of the things we will do is work towards getting more industries into the heart of the 6th District. But one of the things we have to do, and as you talk about the population of the poorest people in the 6th District, that's the background in which I came from. We have to work with the technical schools and high schools, as far as the high school, bringing technical skills back into the schools. And I've shared this on numerous occasions, go as far back as middle school, when you go into the 6th grade. Start finding technical trades and skills that young people are more inclined to just love doing. It matters little who an individual is. If they do something that they love, they will be good at it. And once he or she finds that area in which they love doing, they will be good at it. Now, once they graduate high school, they can go into these technical plants or go into the second level of education and learning more technical skills. We have to get the labor force educated when these industries and stuff come to the state. We got to get them educated. So it goes right back down to education. Education is education. You educate a person, you liberate their lifestyle, you liberate the way they think. You change the whole community when you bring education into an area. We have to build a foundation on education for our young people, our young men who are losing sense of hope, who don't think they can get a job. They look at, I'm thinking about myself. I looked at my family when I was in Southeast Georgia. Nobody was doing nothing. Nobody was working. That cycle was repeating itself. And I was determined to get out of that cycle. by the grace of God, the Air Force gave me my ticket out.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do.
It's funny because when I was a cop on the street, I'd see these kids hanging out, and it's like, well, I'm forever going to be poor. I'm forever going to be on welfare and everything else. And at that point, my first husband being a Marine, and I was around a lot of recruiters, I would start talking to them and saying, well, here's an out, whether or not it's the Marine Corps, the Navy, or the Army, they're going to give you a college education if you join up. They will pay for it for you because if you can't afford it, they need you to have skills. They want you to have skills, and they're willing to help you with them. And, a lot of these kids, I was able to get out of that life. And, years later, one of them came back and he said, officer, thank you. I'm now getting married. I'm now starting a family, and I'm living a life far better than my parents gave me. And, again, this is the message we have to get out. You can pull yourself up, but you've got to be willing to take that first step to try. Without
one
that...
writer said, I must have read this 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. This writer wrote, only in America, it matters little your ethnicity, it matters little your social background, it matters little how poor you are. If you educate yourself, you can pull yourself out of poverty. Everybody does not have to have a bachelor's degree. Everybody don't have to go to school for 4 years, but you got to have some kind of training. You have to have something that you could bring to the table when you are out here applying for a job. Even if you just got the self-determined self-will, somebody can see something in you that no one else can see. But you got to want it. You got to want to pull yourself out. Regardless of how much we want to pull people out, if you don't want to do it, there's nothing anybody can do for you. The military has been the road to so many success stories for people born in low-income areas or homes. The military has been the military was my way out because a majority of my friends when I was a young boy became alcoholics, and I was determined not to be one. And I took that way out. And I had a young lady when I went back home visiting one time. She said to me, you took the easy way out. What do you mean I took the easy way out? I took a way out. It wasn't easy. I had to get trained. I had to go to basic training. And it's appalling that people just don't want to step up and do something for themselves and find excuses not to do. And we got to instill back in the young minds and spirit of people, you got to want things for yourself and get people out of the rut of socializing with people that don't want to do nothing. And it becomes a whole different dynamics in certain areas. Nobody's doing nothing, and everybody's happy. How can you be happy and y'all not doing nothing? And we can stop it. We can stop it.
Yeah, this is one thing that we have to teach people. It's easy to put your hand out and say, give me, give me, give me. But yes. Where is it? Where's the personal satisfaction? What is your achievement? What are you proud of? You have no pride, so all you do then is do more drugs, do more drinking, just hang out some more, and you're just spreading your misery around, and you're just wallowing in a self-made pool of misery. But if we can catch these kids when they're young enough and teach them pride in self, and that's something our school system cannot do. That's what we have to have our parents doing. And, I had, when I was up in Walterboro, I was watching, the couples that were sitting there. There's one father came in with his son, and there was an older couple there, and, he looked like he may have been a minister himself. He and his wife were black, and they're talking between the two of them, and they're talking about exercising and doing healthy things. I'm thinking, yay, people are thinking about being self-responsible. And he sees his father and the young son come in, and the care the father was giving the son was just so refreshing. And the gentleman turned around and he said, I am glad that you are the man in his life. He goes, more and more families have to have the father involved. They've got to wake up. And then what he said next was, he said, the crap that they have fed us all these years, we know doesn't work. We've seen the results, and I'm glad that you did too. And I'm saying the cycle is being broken. Amen.
Yes, and we can do it. We can do it. And I've shared that with my entire family doing family reunion. You may not have liked the way I tell you this. You may not understand the way I'm saying this to you, but you can do better if you want to. We have to break this cycle. I started with my family. There's an old concept that says charity starts at home. we ought to start cleaning our own house, start with our own family, our own children, and make them understand that entitlement, free doesn't come free. My grandmother used to say to me when I was young, the only thing in life come free is trouble, and you pay for that eventually. So nothing is in life come free. It comes with a cost. I've heard people in the church say salvation is free, and we sing that song. We sing those hymns, salvation is free. No, it is not. Salvation comes with a commitment to God. You have to give God his glory. So no matter how you look at it, you're going to have to give something, and you're going to have to work for it.